Now I've done a video on these lenses right here. I'll link it somewhere up here and let you guys take a look at that. It's on my YouTube channel. If you're watching this somewhere other than YouTube, go to equinephotoschool.com and find our YouTube channel on there, or search for Equine Photo School on YouTube. Now I've done it, and it's called finding a portrait lens, but I basically go into what all these different lenses do. I have bought some lenses, I've sold some lenses since then, but it's a really good video, and it'll show you compression. It shows you different focal lengths and what happens when you shoot at different focal lengths and you're shooting a subject's face, and you can apply that to horses easy, no problem. So I don't want to get into and like redo a video that I've already done when I have so many videos to do that I haven't done. Let's start with literally the elephant in the room, this big beast. This is on a 1DX body from Canon, and this is a 120 to 300 millimeter lens at f2.8 all the way through, which means no matter where I'm at in this zoom range, I can open up this aperture to f2.8. It will not change on me. It's not a variable aperture. Very high quality lens. It's a little bit slow to focus, but I've used the Sigma dock, which is nice. You can customize these lenses, and I've increased the focusing speed of this lens by jumping on and using the dock, which is a great tool. If you get Sigma lenses, I highly recommend you get the dock. The next one up here is the 70 to 200. This is from Canon. This is version 2. Version 3 looks just like this. The RF one, this is an EF mount, but the RF mount for the mirrorless cameras is very similar. It just, you know, looks a little bit more modern, but otherwise functions the same. This is also f2.8 all the way through. We've got this guy. This is a very cool looking lens. If we take this lens hood off, you can really see how cool this lens is. This is a prime lens. This is 105 millimeters, and it's big. I mean, look at this thing. You can see this opens up to f1.4. That's a huge aperture. It's really nice. This is great for portraits. It's pretty good for horse portraits. These lenses are better for horse portraits, but this is really nice. I've used this one to get some artsy kind of stuff and not necessarily conformation pictures and having perfect pictures. This is really great for those times when you're not so concerned about a little bit of distortion. This is a good lens. Really, if you're going to shoot horse portraits, we'll get into that, but just know I would recommend at least 135 millimeters, where this is just 30 millimeters short. It's pretty close. You know, it's not that bad of a lens, but I love it. This thing is great for what it's for getting that super shallow depth of field with a relatively good compression, which that means, you know, your focal length, it brings the background closer. We talked about this. This is that macro lens we just had a discussion about. This is an 85 millimeter lens. Also kind of a funky looking lens here. It's you know, short and squatty. It's thick. This is an f1.2, so very big aperture on this guy. And it's nice. It's almost comparable to this lens. They're very similar. This is a little bit wider, not much. I really used to love shooting portraits on this one. This one is going to go soon. I'm going to sell it fairly soon just because I have this lens now and I like it so much better. I just love this lens. It's funky looking. People ask questions, and it just creates that much better of a picture. It's a little bit more compression, a little bit narrower shot. I just like it. So this one is going, but this has made me a lot of money, guys. I don't hate on this, and I hate to see it go. It's a beautiful lens. But 85 1.2 is what that one is. Now, moving down the list a little bit here, we've got this guy, which is a 50 millimeter. This is also 1.2, very nice. You've heard of a nifty 50, and a lot of you guys have probably shot with it, which is a 50 millimeter 1.8. This is far superior to that lens. Not only is it a bigger aperture, but much, much better glass. This creates some very beautiful pictures. I love this thing. I haven't shot that much on it because it's pretty new. I haven't owned this for a terribly long time, but it's great for those artsy kind of shots, and kind of gives you about the same compression that the human eye has at 50 millimeters. Then we've got this is a 24 millimeter, this is a 1.4, nice wide shot. I love to shoot astrophotography on this. If you watch my recent video, probably not, because I didn't post it at Equine Photo School, but I posted it on the Oli Moss on Instagram, and on my Oli's Images YouTube channel. I just made a quick little video on astrophotography, so shameless plug, go check that out. And then I've got this 16 to 35 zoom lens. This one is an f4. This is my only lens. It's not 2.8 or smaller or a bigger aperture, smaller number. They call that faster lens when the number's smaller. But this is an f4 because it's stabilized, so it has internal stabilization. So does this guy here and this guy. These will let you, and does this one too? Yes, this one is also stabilized, but this one's great for shooting some handheld video on the fly when you're just run and gun. It'll help you be a little bit smoother. It's nice. I know this isn't really a video course, but this is what I bought that for. And then this is a 20 millimeter. This one's really nice. Also f1.4. It's just a little bit wider than this 24 mil. Astrophotography is all I bought these for. They're great for other things too, but that's my main purpose. And then this is the 24 to 70. I use this one all the time for awards, like award ceremonies, background kind of shots. This one, you can see this thing's loosey-goosey. It's this one's been with me for like 5 or 6 years, and it has seen a lot of action, you might say. So it's getting worn out. It's getting there. It's on its last little leg, I guess. But between this one and this one, the 24 to 70 and the 70 to 200, these are both f2.8 all the way through. These are your core lenses. If you're going to just shop and you want the bare minimum, the bare bones, I would recommend getting a 24 to 70 and a 70 to 200. You're going to have that nice wide kind of, you're going to be able to shoot awards pictures and that kind of thing. And then you're going to be able to shoot everything else with this. If you're shooting portraits, this is the big money maker. This one has made me a fair bit of money too. But if I was only going to have 2 lenses, it would be these 2 right here. These are like the core, the workhorses. You've got a pretty wide shot to a fairly telephoto shot. You can work with them, and you can make a lot of money if you just have those 2 lenses. These other lenses are really great. There's some artsy stuff. There's some stuff that's not necessarily income generating, like astrophotography. But you know, this guy is great. It lets me be a little bit safer, get away from the action a little bit further. But it's not as useful as this lens is. So if you don't have the budget, don't worry. This is kind of a nice to have, but not a must have. These 2, these are a must have in my opinion. Okay? All right. Now, let's talk about one more thing here really quickly, kind of under the lenses category, but we're going to talk about teleconverters here. I've heard some camera stores refer to these as doublers or extenders. They get their nickname doublers because some of them are 2x, but we have 2 options primarily. There are some other ones, but these are your 2 main options. You have a 1.4x and a 2, let's say 2.0, so it looks nice, a 2x. So we got 1.4 and a 2x, and this gets you 40% more focal range, focal length. Okay, so what does that mean? That means if you have a 200 millimeter, you now have a 280 millimeter. Okay, so that's this little guy right here. This is a 1.4x teleconverter. Now that's nice. It sounds great, right? You think I'm going to put that on this 70 to 200, and then I'm going to have more. You got more than, 40% more than 70, and then that's all the way up to 280. And I put that on this 120 to 120 to 300. Excuse me. We put it on this, and you get 168 millimeters to 420 millimeters, which is super good, right? That's great. The drawback is that you lose a stop of light. So we're going to get into that when we talk about light. Coming up soon, we'll talk about what is a stop of light. But for now, just know you lose a stop of light, and that's the drawback here. So this is the plus side, but this is the minus side here. So what does that mean? What is this really kind of telling us? If we put it on one of these lenses that's an f2.8 all the way through, you get your f2.8, and that turns that into an f4. So you go from a 2.8 maximum aperture to a f4 maximum aperture. You lose one stop. That sucks. That is a major drawback of these. So if you are shooting in low light and you don't have the ability to go to f4 and still maintain all your other things, it's just a no-go. It doesn't work. There's a lot of dark barns out there. When your shutter speed is going to drop too low or your ISO is going to be too high for your camera, at that point, it's just not going to work. So it's not worth the extra 80 millimeters. Now, if you have a 2x, you get 100% more focal length. Okay, so you got 100% more focal length because you're 2x, you're 2 times, you're doubling it. So let's stick with this example here of our 200 millimeters. So our 200 millimeters, let's pretend that says millimeters. That makes this 400 millimeters. Okay, so we're taking our 200 and making it 400, which is great, right? That's super good. That's awesome. If we need the extra focal length, we got it. All of a sudden that works, but, okay, that's the plus here, that's the plus. Here's the drawback. The minus to that is we lose 2 stops of light. We lose 2 stops of light. What does that mean for us? Let's stick with our f2.8 example. That makes it f5.6. Some of you are thinking, because I've ran into this a lot of times, and I used to think that too, you think, yeah, it's no big deal. It's just a little bit, right? It's just a, it doubles that, but hey, whatever. It can't be that much. It's a lot of light. So basically a stop of light is twice as much light. This is twice as much times twice as much, which is a whole lot of light. That's a huge difference. All of a sudden you went from a very bright image to a very dark image, and then you have to compensate for that using ISO or shutter speed to make up the difference. And this is usually a killer. So I very rarely, hardly ever, I have one here. I've got this 2x here. This one just came with this camera, this lens when I bought it. It was like a bonus that they threw it in when I bought the thing. I very rarely use it. It's just uncommon for me to need that. Or if I have strobes, I have to turn up my strobes a lot to make up the difference. So if I have that much overhead in my strobes and I can increase my strobes that much to add more light to make up for my light loss there, if I can add back in 2 stops of light, and I really desperately need that extra focal length. And here's another negative about both of these, right? Another negative, they're slower to focus. When you're shooting action and you need things to happen very fast, they are a little slower to focus. So you have to adjust how you operate. You adjust your technique to make up for that difference. You adjust your light or your other camera settings to make up for this difference. If you absolutely need this, it's worth it. If you can get away with these things and you can make up for the difference and you need 400 millimeters, then you do it. I shoot with the 1.4x fairly frequently because I'm already shooting at f4 when I'm strobed, so it's nothing to put this on there. All I have to worry about is this slower to focus, and I just adjust, what I do in the shots I can get. There's a couple of shots that I just can't get because it won't focus fast enough to jump to that shot and then back to my next shot. So I have to deal with that. But otherwise, I pop that on here a lot. I have 168 to 420 millimeters, like I talked about a minute ago. It's a beast. It lets me, in barrel racing, for example, I get to be further away from second barrel, further away out of the danger zone. I'm much safer, much more comfortable, have a much bigger setup, and I can still reach all 3 barrels and coming home, no problem. I'm just that much further away. It's great. It's really, you pack these 3 together, this is the ideal combination for some barrel racing now. I love it. It's great. It's also like fairly good. I'll use this 2X. Sometimes I'll stick that on here if I need 600 millimeters and say I'm doing breakaway or something that's usually happening way at the other end of the arena and I'm at a really long arena, like the Lazy E, for example, and I can increase my strobes enough to make up the difference in that light loss, then hey, yeah, no problem. I'll stick this on there. It'll work. They are usually like 2-second runs, 3-second tops. They haven't made it that far down the arena. The focus doesn't have to change that quickly. It's no big deal. So certain situations, it makes it totally worth it and it's great. Here's the other positive. Let's give you another positive to outweigh all these things. Positive numero uno, these are cheap. Okay, so if you were gonna buy a 400 millimeter lens, even at f4, you're talking $5,000, $10,000, depending on the make and model and how new or used it is. But you could be spending upwards of 10 grand. But if you just take this little guy and stick it on here, well, this lens is a $3,600 lens with a $500 thing. You're a little over 4 grand instead of 5 grand or 10 grand, and you have a fairly close lens, like way cheaper, kind of close, you know, and you get there. If you take this 2X and you stick it on this little guy, now we're talking like a $2,000 lens with a $500 attachment on it. You're getting that 400 millimeters that you wanted. Sure, you're at 5.6, that's a trade-off, but for 500 bucks more, you get double the focal length. That's pretty cool. So these 2 positives draw a lot of people in, and that's why you buy them. I have a couple of these because I do use them plenty, and when I have a second shooter and they need one, boom, I let them borrow another one. So it's great. There's a time and a place for everything. That's why somebody made it in the first place. And if you don't have a lot of budget and you need something to make something work, get through this event, whatever, go out and buy one. It'll work. It's a cool little deal, and you've always got it, you know. I used to have the version 2 of these, and then I sold it for a couple of these version 3s, and these do focus a lot better. They're a little faster focusing than the version 2s. Those are really rough, but this 2X is still very slow. Anyway, that's enough about that. That's enough about teleconverters. Let's see you in the next video. Stick with me. I hope you're enjoying this. Hope you're learning something too. And check out YouTube. Check us out on those courses, workshops. We might have a workshop coming up right now at the time of this recording. We've got one coming up very soon, so take a look. Check that out. Go to equinephotoschool.com. You'll find everything there. You'll find the blog post, the podcast, all of it. See you in the next video.